What is up, my brothers from another mother? We got a sponsored request today from a gentleman hailing from the Toronto area. He's asking about some thoughts around the betatization by 1,000 concessions. It's a notion we've chatted about before. Before we hop into today's video, shout out to the channel sponsor, the Tactical Soap Company. There's a link pinned in the description for 10% off when you check out with coupon code Cooper. You're going to need game, but this will help. It's infused with pheromones. It does work. I've gotten tons of positive feedback from men from my community. Let's hop straight into it. We've got a 46-year-old dude, says relatively good looking, 5'9", 177 pounds, physically healthy, though not robust yet. I consider myself masculine, both alpha and beta tendencies. I'm at least game aware and certainly red pill aware. While I'm not a player, I still have plenty of notches on my bedpost. Okay, so here's my thing, he says. I've noticed over time that I get owned by longer-term girlfriends and lovers. My game frame momentum gets sapped over time, and my frame gets forced to collapse on itself. This is par for the course, gentlemen. If you sleepwalk through a long-term relationship or a marriage, it is going to inevitably happen. Card up on the top right did a good example with Prince Harry recently in the last few weeks, so take a look at that one if you haven't seen it to give you some more idea of what that is and what he's talking about. I presume he probably saw that video and wanted to kind of dive into his own scenario. So he says, I end up feeling very manipulated into directions I had no intention of going. That's what happens when you sleepwalk through life, guys. If you're not attentive to being at the helm of your life, being in the driver's seat of your life, you will get redirected into many different directions that you have no intention of going, of course. So hindsight being 20/20 is always clarity, but you've got to open your eyes as you're navigating your life. I'm not naturally a dominant guy. I'm not a sidekick, he says. I just don't really give a shit who's in charge of everything if everything is working. That's a problem right there. If you don't really care who's in charge if everything is working, you will find she will probably take charge. The female primary social order that we live in is going to encourage women to be more dominant. We see this transition with men becoming more feminine, and you see a lot more women becoming more masculine. They like to take on more dominant roles. So if you're not aware of how you're navigating your life, this is bound to happen. So again, this is on you. It's good that you're seeing it in hindsight, but it's more important that you deal with it as you're alive. Live in the now. Okay, there's a great book by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. Check that out. It's a great read. Or perceived to be working. Carrying on. He says, I simply leave groups that I don't like being in. Very good for you. I think the frame challenges shifts are just too subtle for me to notice. They usually are. That's why they call it betatization by 1,000 concessions. It's small, little, tiny concessions that you continue to make back to back over and over again that allow your frame to drop. But certainly they are happening. So when I finally notice things are like WTF. It's like being in a rowboat that has a slow leak and you just kind of ignore it and it just keeps filling up with water until you start to realize, this is getting really hard to row through the water. It's because you're dragging a lot of the extra weight in and it's starting to slowly sink. So you've got to be attentive on these small little tiny issues, because if you don't, they become a big nightmare. And he goes on to say, I look at the bigger, sorry, he says, I look like a bigger asshole when I course correct. Well, if you're doing it really late in the game, then you're going to make drastic maneuvers and you're going to come off as a big asshole. You're better off being the asshole than being the wimp, if I'm being honest. But course correcting too late requires dramatic action to correct it. So yeah, you're right. It's like the culmination of insignificant shit tests I ignored, lost track of. Richard, I've got an acquired brain injury. So he's had head trauma. I noticed towards the end, he says down over here, don't hit your head. And so my cognitive issues make holding frame a real challenge. I don't lack confidence, I lack clarity and the habit of maintaining frame, and I'm pretty easygoing. For example, let's say after a show, I'm not sure what you do for a living, but it says after a show, I want to go to a cozy bistro across the street. And he says, because it's right there, it looks good with my regular date. I point to it and say, let's go there. My date exclaims, there's so many Korean places we could eat at. I presume it's a passive request to eat Korean. I have no objection. Really, it's just a few feet over, you know? So sure, Korean food then. So right there, like that is it's a tiny little thing and it normally wouldn't matter. But if you're yielding back to back to back to back on and on and on, you're going to become less of an interest to her, less of an apple of her eye if you continue to yield to every single thing. So being aware of it, well, you know, since you've had a brain injury and since you're talking about being aware of it in hindsight, let's talk about something that you can do on the spot as you're kind of living through this. And I think if you pause for a moment and reflect, and if you can get good at this, this will probably solve your problem, I would think. I hope anyway. But if you can ask yourself this question, if by doing X, am I going to maintain frame? And if the answer is no, then you don't do it. It's as simple as that. So when that test comes up next time where you're like, let's go across the street to that place, there's a great bistro, love the food there, let's grab a bite to eat, and she protests and says that she wants Korean, all you have to do is just take her hand, walk across the street and enter and say, you're going to love this place, trust me. And you carry on. So try that as a little tip next time. Just be aware of what you're doing in every single transaction. So then he goes on to say, you can see how innocuous and harmless seeming requests could turn frame around over time, right? One easy thing to say yes to after the other. In that situation, hindsight tells me it was a shit test. I made a mental note of the behavior, and in future I can deal with that kind of shit test. So how does one get faster at recognizing a shit test to deal with it all? Yeah, so we just talked about that. So again, ask yourself the question, by doing X, will I be maintaining frame? If the answer is no, you don't do it. Simple as that. It's a very simple process. I mean, people like to try to complicate things far too often for themselves. I always say guys are masters of complicating their lives and then trying to justify why they do it. You already have the answer. You know, most people will often have the answer. We're pretty good at assessing our own capacity, skills, and value. Just give yourself permission to do it. And I think that you get it, right? How does one distinguish between subtle frame challenges and polite requests for consideration? It happens because I'm pretty agreeable. On one hand, I like being easygoing. On the other hand, I get painted into a corner wrestling with context someone else changed. Interesting. I do a show every Monday with Dr. Shanti Smith. He's a clinical psychologist. We called it Before the Train Wreck because we're trying to help guys before they end up with trauma and, you know, they get train wrecked through the divorce machine, for example. And he pulled out this one study on the start of one of our broadcasts where I think the title of it was something along the lines of men that are less agreeable have better relationships and more sex. So just let that sink in for a minute. So you like being easygoing. On the other hand, you get painted in a corner. Okay, example, I'm spinning a plate, and after a month, she behaves as though I'm happy to move in and put my name on some of the bills, even though I was clear about not doing that. That's just a shit test. I'm not sure in what parallel universe it would be a smart idea to move in with a woman after a month. But if you're already clear on not doing that, then usually the applied response would be amuse mastery, which is agree and amplify. And the response would be something like, sure, why don't I move in? Why don't I buy you a house too and throw a pool in the backyard and we'll live happily ever after? And you kind of like smirk and walk away. That's what amuse mastery is. So, you know, if you're getting pushed into some tested boundary over here, that's essentially how you can respond to it. Little tool there. But it happens invisibly, gradually, and I suspect on purpose. I know it's not on purpose, actually. Believe it or not, this is not done intentionally. This is just how things are. I don't think that women go around every day going, let me conjure up 17 shit tests and I'm going to pull number 15 from my menu and apply it to my relationship. It just happens. You know, women are always testing men to make sure that they're confident, competent, you know, basically they're able to deliver on the promise of masculinity. That's what women do. You know, they have to do it. It's part of the biological imperative. It's part of their nature. It's not maniacal. It's not evil or anything like that. It just is. So just accept it for what it is. Anyway, let's keep going down over here. I have trouble with when and how, trivial requests. We kind of talked about dealing with those on the spot. I'm having trouble recognizing little grabs for power in real time. Yeah, okay. Richard, I would love if you could talk some more about this kind of stuff for me. It's frame suicide by kindness and misunderstood frame challenges. I know I don't need to be nice to women, but I'd like to be considerate of the women who treat me well without biting me in the ass down the road. I agree with you, dude. I'm hoping for drills to practice noticing power grabs as they get increasingly more subtle. Does that even make sense? How does this even parse for a Google search? Dude, I have a feeling that you're probably a military guy at some point because you're talking about drills for practice. And I gave you one earlier on. Again, the practice becomes, if by doing X, do I maintain frame? If the answer is no, then you don't do it. You're going to have to, you know, let go of it from time to time. But more often than not, you should be the one in control of where things are going. And that's a drill. So use that as your drill. If you can do that, then good. You know, it's going to take some work. It's going to take some practice. But if you're having a hard time because of the head trauma, I don't have a magic wand to fix that. I don't know if there's some coaching or somebody that you can talk to that might help you pass that through that decision-making process. But that should be what you could use as a, you know, quote unquote drill. It goes on to say, thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you for your body work and helping men help themselves. Love from the GTA. Okay, dude. So yeah, that's it. There's really nothing else to cover there. It's something that you can, and this goes for all guys. I think all guys are incredibly bad at this, especially men in long-term relationships and marriage where they just let these things slide time by time. But if you're aware of what's happening with the transaction, I always tell guys, it's a lot more work being in a long-term relationship. You're constantly going to be shit tested. You're constantly going to get pushed back on. You're constantly going to have struggles and challenges like this. And you always run the risk of the betatization by 1,000 concessions. So be aware. Don't sleepwalk through life, gentlemen. I'll leave it at that. Before I go real quick, if you want to make a request like this gentleman did, you can go to entrepreneursandcars.com/request. There's a card up on the top right of the screen for you to do that. It's a sponsored video, your name, your email, you're going to make the PayPal payment, and then it's going to send you to another page where you can go and request just like he did by email. Hope that helps. You guys are hopefully coming up on the end of the year and got a big year planned for 2019. If you have any topic suggestions, you can put them in the comments below, but want to thank you guys for the sponsored requests. It really helps create the content of work on my channel. Oh, before I go, real quick, community page as well. Got a shout out to the members joining up over there. I've got 2 tiers on that. Now, it originally started with 1 tier, but on the 2nd tier, we've got a monthly coaching, which some guys, of course, won't have the financial resources to hop onto, but it is well worth the money and I guarantee results. The basic plan went from $10 to $25 because it is that useful. I should be charging a heck of a lot more, to be honest with you, but I'm going to leave the price fixed for 2019. So if you get in, you're grandfathered in future, just like my guys that were grandfathered in at $10 a month. Hope to see you guys in the community there. And if you need one-on-one coaching, I'm only holding 5 spots open because I've got 3 currently that I'm coaching, so I don't want to get too busy with it. But consider that if you need some help with something and some hand-holding for, building yourself up for the best version of you in 2019. See you guys later. Peace.